All right, guys. My buddy is back here on the program to talk about some big fights happening this week and so much more. PFL with the card of a lifetime going down this Friday in the States. That's a Thursday here in Australia. He joins me ahead of that. Plus, the big UFC 320 I want to get his thoughts on as well and some other things. Dan Hardy, dude, you're a bit of a trailblazer just flying town to town. You're like PFL's Ric Flair over here, right?
Yeah, it's been a long week traveling back and forth to France, but we had a great show. It was a really good event. Obviously, the crowd in France is, I mean, they're just wild for MMA at the moment. It was the same as when McGregor was coming through in Ireland, and there was like this you know excitement around it. It's the same in France right now, and there's some really cool stars coming through, both in France and Belgium, that have just got people going wild. So it was good. The journey back was a long one, but I'm back in Vegas now, and yeah, just ready for fight week now.
Just trying to, survive. I got you, brother. Hey, just quickly with when it comes to France, a couple of things. If people missed it, a couple of things they should go back and watch if they get a chance.
Oh man, I mean, well, Amin Ayoub in the main event was incredible. He fought a short notice replacement, a guy called Giovanni Lopez, who flew all the way from Brazil and just absolutely fought his heart out. I mean, it was stopped it late in the third round, but he'd taken a good few shots. But they had an absolute scrap. A real fun fight to watch. Amin Ayoub's a good addition to the lightweight division. You mentioned obviously this week's event with Usman and Paul, the rematch in Dubai. That's going to be incredible. But the lightweight division in the PFL right now is it's wild, and that was kind of shown all the way through the Nantes card. To be honest, I mean, we had Amin Ayoub in the main event, and he's right on that point where he's ready to step up into that big boys bracket with all the killers. And I think with that win, it's kind of solidified his movement out of like the European scene, as it were, and onto the international. Co-main event was a guy called Boris Atangana. He was on the Brussels event as well, and there's something special about him. And I honestly, I can't oversell that statement. Him and his teammate, he's got a teammate called Patrick Habarora. He was an amateur champion, and in my mind right now, he's like the leader of Belgian MMA. And Boris Atangana's right behind him. And he's like, I'll fight anybody, middleweight to heavyweight, I don't care. And he's just cleaning people's clocks left and right. He's a scary dude. And we had great fights in the tournaments as well. The lightweight fights and the bantamweight fights. We've got some really good tournament finals coming up in December in Lyon. I mean, just absolute bangers of fights. Baris Adi against Dean Garnett and Connor Hughes against Alex Chizov. Both really, really good fights. So yeah, overall, I was happy with it. I still need a few hours sleep to catch up after the week, but I'm very proud of the event.
And you're flying over to Dubai, right?
I'm not. No, absolutely not.
No.
Veronica's on the 320, so I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not doing the back and forth during fight week. I'd be exhausted.
Yeah. But I got to say, just quickly for people in the States, you can go on the app, check out some fights. And also here in Australia, you go on Stan, you can check out some fights. So all the ones that Dan mentioned, that's the fun thing. You can go back and watch some of the key fights from the tournament and then just have a couple of beers, relax, and watch some elite MMA with some names that you get to watch potentially for the first time or again outside of the UFC. There was a UFC in Perth, Dan, with a lot of new names there. I just want to quickly get your thoughts on the strange thing that happened. For those that missed it, I'm sure not that many people maybe watched it live. Jake Matthews was fighting Neil Magny. Might have been one of the craziest things I've ever seen live. I don't know if you've seen it before because you've been to way more fights than I have and been in the industry longer. But basically, towards the end of the first round, the referee waves the fight off and basically declares Jake Matthews the winner through a sub win. There was about 1 second left. Neil Magny was fine. The wrong call was made. And then the referee in that moment just acted like nothing happened and just continued the fight, which was kind of crazy. Everyone was confused, including the crowd, believe me, including Jake. Then Jake went on to dominate a little bit. And then Neil was able to turn things around at 38 years old, submit Jake Matthews. The whole thing was wild. Jake is appealing the situation. I tried to ask Dave Shaw about it. They're kind of neither here or there on it. Dude, what is your stance on it? Like from a fighter's perspective, I guess Jake was saying that if someone tells you you've won the fight, you change your mindset and it's hard to get back into gear. So that could be impactful. At the same time as well, Neil was able to take him out later on in the fight. What is your stance on this appeal and everything that happened?
Yeah, it's a really awkward situation. I'll try and sum it up quite quickly because there's quite a few references I would say that are quite, they're all linked together. I mean, ultimately, it was a very unfortunate situation for Jake Matthews, and I do agree on the appeal. The referee put his hands on Jake before the horn. Jake did the right thing to let go of his opponent, who he assumed was unconscious. Obviously, the referee assumed Neil was unconscious as well, and at that point, that's the fight over. Regardless of what happens next, Jake won the fight by submission. If it was the wrong call by the referee, then that's on the referee, and that's the unfortunate circumstance for him to deal with. But I understand in the scenario what the referee saw. He acted probably too quickly, and I can liken it to another situation that you'll remember, which was Robbie Lawler against Ben Askren.
That's
And
right. The
that was
bulldog choke. Yeah.
exactly right. That was a really tight bulldog choke, and for a second, I had a video breaking it down, but it was taken down off YouTube, unfortunately. You can see Robbie Lawler's arm fall, and he's clearly unconscious, right? And what people have to understand that don't do jiu-jitsu, and anybody that does jiu-jitsu or MMA, I'm telling you basics. The line between consciousness and unconsciousness is a very, very fine one, right? I remember in fights where I've gone out of consciousness and come back into consciousness and carried on fighting, and I wasn't really fully aware that I was unconscious until after the fight. A good example is when I fought Chris Lytle and I got caught in a guillotine. I was out in that fight. I actually was. What was weird is I was kind of daydreaming that I was in the gym training with one of my teammates. It's the oddest thing when you kind of lose consciousness and then you come back in. And I'm sure Neil Magny felt absolutely fine as soon as he came back into consciousness. But I honestly still think that he went unconscious when his arm relaxed, like logically. And someone that's a veteran like Neil Magny is not going to do something like that that's going to give the referee the impression that he's gone unconscious. He just wouldn't. So to me, that looked like a natural reaction. His arm goes limp, just like Robbie Lawler's did. The referee jumps in, and as soon as the chokes let go, air comes back into his lungs. He's got blood to his brain, and then he's back alert as well. And because it was just a split second, he was switched off. It doesn't take too much for you to kind of be right back in the room where you were and able to to continue fighting. And the other thing as well, if you look at it from Jake Matthews' perspective, I remember calling one of the fights that sticks out in my mind of all the fights I called with the UFC was Bisping against Anderson Silva in London.
Oh,
And if you
man.
remember that, was it end of the third round, Anderson Silva skips in, nails Bisping with a knee, and basically knocks him out. I mean, that was TKO. The referee kind of stood staring at Bisping while he was sat on the floor up against the cage. And I mean, if Anderson Silva would have stepped in and hit him one more time, it would have been done, wouldn't it? But Anderson went over, jumped on the cage, and celebrated. And you just see that adrenaline dump, right? It's a weird thing to feel. It's like it. I can imagine that all of a sudden he had that rush and then a crash, and then he's got 60 seconds on his stool to kind of gather himself and get back into the fight. And although he did really well in the second round, that adrenaline dump, that feeling of victory, and then all of a sudden you're back on your stool and ready to go again. That there is definitely an effect that it takes on your body. I can't explain it. I'm sure no one's done any scientific research into it because it's not particularly important. But I've just seen it enough times in fighters where they've let go of a choke and then the fighter carries on and they're like, oh, and it's a weird thing. I feel for Jake Matthews. I hope he gets the appeal that he wants. I hope he gets the result that he wants. I feel bad for the referee as well because obviously, this is these kind of things can affect a young referee's career, and I don't think he's a bad referee. I just think he jumped in at too soon, and then the horn went, and it kind of saved him. It kind of gave him the opportunity to allow the fight to continue. When if you take the horn out of it and you just watch him jump in, that's the end of the fight, right? The fact that the horn was there allowed him to kind of change his mind, which is you've got to respect Herb in the circumstance with the with the bulldog choke because he stuck to his guns, and then he realized you can see it on his face when he's saying to Robbie, it's like, oh dude, I thought you were out. And in defense of Herb, he was out. You just got to, a message to fighters out there, just keep that choke on until the referee gives you a good shake. If it's a heel hook, different, don't Pal Harris it. But, chokes are different. You don't want to, you don't want to give away an opportunity like that, because I feel for Jake Matthews.
Yeah, man. And, Christian, my videographer, you've met him before. He's friends with the referee. He seems like a great bloke. But yeah, it was just a bit of a mess. And also, there's also the payment thing. I hope Jake is able to get his win bonus at least. I don't know. Dave Shaw said nothing on it. I tried to ask after the fight. Hey, just quickly, Carlos Ulberg was able to pick up this win, which leads us into UFC 320. Before I get your thoughts on a couple of fights from UFC 320, Dominic Reyes, man, he just looked kind of lost out there. Wasn't really able to get anything going, and he just let Carlos Ulberg get his distance down, and then Ulberg, as planned, put him out. It was a big fight week for Reyes. He was there was a lot of pressure. I kind of felt the pressure getting to him as I spoke to Reyes throughout the week. I know he was back on this run, but yeah, it was a strange performance from Reyes. He didn't really get a chance to do much. What was your take on Carlos's impressive win here?
I just thought he looked confident. He had presence, and that's really what stood out as soon as the fight started. He walked out with presence. The whole introductions and everything. He just looked so calm and confident. And across the other side, Reyes, he looked agitated the whole time. He didn't seem to get started. It was almost like he felt as soon as he steps forward and takes a risk, whatever he does, he's going to open him up and he's going to get hurt. That was kind of the feeling that and respect to Ulberg, he thought like that was going to happen as well. And, he kind of manifested it. I mean, he's a sharpshooter, isn't he? His beautiful movement, very, very slick. His ability to weave his way through punches and catch the target. They're doing something special at that gym, absolutely. And I think, sky's the limit for him. He's one of those people that can kind of reinvigorate this division a little bit with the absence of John Jones. And obviously, we don't know what's going to happen next week. If we have another drowning performance from Ankalaev, you kind of want another striker in there to see what they can do. So we'll see. But I think his future's bright, definitely.
City Kickboxing 4 for 4 in one night with a couple of debutantes. Not bad for a gym from New Zealand. He's flying over to UFC 320. He spoke to Hunter Campbell in the octagon. He's trying to become the backup here. Unlikely the Pereira Ankalaev would fall out, but how much of a chance would you give him against those guys? Do you think he's a bit of a dark horse? I feel like the Pereira fight maybe could be an interesting one. I don't know. Ankalaev, that's a bit of a different animal. What do you think?
I give him a shot against either of those guys. I think he's got the footwork, the head movement, and the striking to cause any of them problems. I mean, Ankalaev, although he can wrestle and he's got a decent clinch, he's not known for his submissions and his grappling necessarily. And obviously Pereira is going to want to keep a fight on the feet and trade. I give him a shot against either of them, honestly. Momentum's everything in this sport, and I think Ulberg's got that right now. And I think, with him carrying that main event on his shoulders like he did, and having the performance that he did, that can do a lot for a fighter and their confidence in that moment. And just the very fact that he's flying over to Vegas to be at 320, in his mind, that puts him in the title picture. And he's going to be cage side watching both of those guys as they're going to be, his next opponent. And I think that's a healthy mindset for him to be in. It's going to motivate him to push forward and improve himself.
Yeah, if you're a young fighter, you can kind of look at his run and be like, all right, this is how you do it to a T. You fight the guys coming up, you build up a little bit of a streak. Now he's just come off main eventing a local fight night card, so you get a little taste of what it's like to be up the top. And then you wait in. And now he's coming off this 9-fight win streak. He's been able to fight, because the biggest mistake fighters make is like, I just want to fight like the guy in the top 10 or 15 in the UFC. Do it. You get defeated. You lose your confidence. You lose your mojo. Before you know it, you're like 0-2, 0-3, like a few guys on the card. One of the guys was in the co-main event, strangely. And then you're out of the UFC before you get a chance. Like this is pure CKB, beautifully building a fighter brick by brick and taking him to the best place that he can be physically to give him his best opportunities. But the main event, of course, this coming weekend is Ankalaev and Pereira. Pereira's been dialed in. People would be surprised to know that before the last Ankalaev fight, he was in Sydney doing side quest seminars, all sort of stuff. And that was like a couple of weeks before, and that was in Australia. How much do you think that this dialed-in version of Alex Pereira, how different do you think this rematch is going to be with the best version of Alex Pereira? No injuries, dialed in versus Ankalaev. Do you think it's the same story, or do you think Pereira can actually turn this thing around?
No, I think it's a very different fight this time around. I think a little bit like, obviously not in the same capacity, but a little bit like Dominic Reyes. He just kind of looks a bit flat, and not that he was intimidated to open up, but he kind of couldn't get started. Ankalaev was always kind of he's a bit awkward and he's kind of on the front foot, and it was Pereira was waiting for him to open up to see what he was going to do. It wasn't the confident Pereira that we see, kind of walk forward and bully people, and I think that's going to be the version that we'll get this time around. Um, the other thing I will say, Ankalaev, we've seen him a couple of times at the PI. He's working with some monstrous fighters. I mean, he really has. He's brought in some big boys to work with. So I think he's going to be trying to push the pace as well, and I expect more grappling from Ankalaev. But I think it's going to be quite an explosive fight this time around. You know, a recharged and refocused Alex Pereira is a scary, scary thing, and side quests, in the background that could be exhausting. I know I've spoke to a lot of people and they said, yeah, he was everywhere. He's at a lot of the events and he's doing this and that. And I would imagine he looked at Ankalaev and thought, I can find a way to this guy's chin and take it, take it home. And you know, I just think maybe he underestimated the slickness and the range management of Ankalaev.
Yeah, it was an interesting fight because Ankalaev was able to pick him apart on the feet. He was going through Pereira's guard. He was outboxing him. He was able to lay combinations at will. What do you think is Pereira's game plan here to turn things around? I know you mentioned maybe establishing that kick and that aggressiveness from the start. Is it about not being able to let Ankalaev build that momentum early? What do you think is the key here for Pereira to be able to turn this thing around?
Well, I mean, two things. One thing, I think he has to be confident in his takedown defense. I think he has to be confident to move forward and to kind of eat up the canvas in front of him and not be too concerned about being defending takedowns and having to sprawl and waste energy doing that. So first of all, I think he's going to come in tremendous condition. I know the other day he was running up at Red Rock, and that's a long run. He looks like he's putting the miles in on the road as well. So digging deep into his gas tank is going to be essential if he's under wrestling pressure, which I do think is likely in this fight. The other thing as well is he always works better moving off the front foot. I think back to his old glory kickboxing days, when he fought Artem Vakitov. And Vakitov's shorter and a little bit more stocky than Pereira, but was a bully, and he kind of marched him down and he forced him onto the ropes. And that version of Alex just he doesn't have the same pop in his punches. You'll notice how loaded he is on his front leg, but his back leg's always primed. He's always kind of halfway into a power punch, which is why he's able to knock people out at short range. But he's better when he's moving forward. If you make him step onto his back foot, it's not as loaded quite as dangerously as it would be if he was being the bully. So I think he needs to take the front foot. He needs to offensively defend takedowns, build frames, stay on the front foot, utilize his knees to the body, and really try and get him out of there. The scariest version of Alex Pereira is the one that gets in there to try and murder you, and he didn't look like that against Ankalaev the last time. And I think if he can get that back, which I certainly think he has this time, it's a different version.
And he's a guy that's been able to rebound different points of his career. Obviously, he was able to come back after Izzy beat him. So he's mentally one of those guys that you can't count out. If Ankalaev wins, obviously there's a number of contenders there. But if Pereira wins, man, interesting one, right? Everybody's sort of talking about, does he go up to heavyweight and have that run there? What do you think? Do you think Pereira could find some success at heavyweight if he was to move up after this fight?
I don't know. I mean, I think he could, but I don't think it's the right time to do it. I think if it was obviously if he got the opportunity for some kind of showcase bout against John Jones, then yeah, fair enough. Because John, even at this point, is still not the biggest of heavyweights. But Alex moving up to take on someone like Tom Aspinall or even someone that's within striking distance of the heavyweight title, they're a lot bigger. There are some big boys up there, and Alex, remember, had made middleweight only shortly, only a short time ago. I don't know as he has the same kind of success at heavyweight that he is right now. I think he can absolutely dominate this division, and I think he needs to. I think honestly, if he wins the belt back here, he's gonna have to beat Ankalaev a second time anyway, isn't he? So he's going to be in this division for a while. And then by that time, you've got people like Carlos Ulberg coming through and making an argument for title shots. So I think this division's ready for a refresh. And I think that, there are going to be some people coming through in this division that by the time we've seen this trilogy of Ankalaev and Pereira over, if obviously he wins this weekend, I think there'll be some new title contenders. So I just don't see him at heavyweight anytime soon having the same kind of impact.
Dude, I love you, but there is no way they're giving him another Ankalaev fight if he wins. Ankalaev is out, man. If he wins, are you kidding me? The UFC's like, we need this guy. We got a CBS deal. Like, he wins. We're giving him, like, is Dominic Reyes available? Like, we're giving him what, like, they're not, it's over after this for Ankalaev. He's got a lot of pressure on his hands, man. It's not going to happen for him.
I agree. I saw Din Thomas the other day is like trying to say that UFC should trade him with the PFL for Dakota. Like,
yes, like he was just on my live show just before, still standing his ground respectfully, believing that trade should be made.
Hey, look, I agree with everything that he said, aside from the part that the trade should be made. It would make no sense whatsoever for the PFL to do that. I love it. I loved him. He's one of the best minds in the game, and one of the loveliest people you'll meet. But that's a wild idea. From the PFL's perspective, which obviously is not. I'm not speaking on behalf of the PFL, but if I were, that's a wild idea.
I'll tell you, you guys have gold in Ditcheva, man. I can't wait to see what's cooking up for her next. But I was going to quickly say, before we get off UFC 320, this Corey Sandhagen Merab fight, right? Merab, Tasmanian Devil, unbelievable cardio. But Sandhagen, he's the kind of guy that's got the experience now. He's got personalities come out, more confidence. He's also dangerous, right? In the scrambles, in the transitions. And Merab has been the kind of guy that will just go and do stuff and put himself in danger in between spots. What are you thinking about this fight? Do you think Corey might be able to catch Merab here, or is it just a situation that Merab is superhuman and it's hard to imagine anyone in that division really beating him?
I am really looking forward to this fight. Of all the fighters, to watch, Corey is one of the more exciting ones for me, because not only is he a very aggressive fighter, he can fight moving forward and backwards, but you can also tell how calculated he is when he's fighting. He does his homework, he knows his division, he knows his opponents before he gets in there, and then you can see how he's toying with them a little bit if he's ahead, or trying to figure out if he's on the back foot. This fight's going to go one or two ways, and that's, I guess that sounds a bit, people say that a bit too much, but either Merabi's just going to overwhelm him. He's just going to steam engine forward and just be able to keep going to the point where Corey can't really get in, just like talking over him in a conversation. Or Corey, at some point in that process, is going to find a mistake in Merab's patterns, and he's going to make him pay for it. I don't know why, but I keep switching back to a fight that happened a few years ago between Brian Ortega and Clay Guida. And do you remember Clay Guida was just, against everybody, he was just an absolute Tasmanian devil, right? He's in your face constantly. And if I remember correctly, he was winning that fight. He was just in Brian Ortega's face. And then in the third round, he rolled, and Brian Ortega hit him with a knee under the chin, knocked him out. It was a beautiful finish. And the reason why I'm saying that is because it took Brian Ortega until the third round to find the opportunity in the pattern of Clay Guida to catch him and put him away. And with people that fight at such a pace, what you tend to find is because they have to make a lot of the decisions automatic, a lot of their decision making goes into like a subconscious decision maker. So like they're making decisions in the moment of which direction they're going to go next and what may be available and how their opponent's feeling. Like there's a conscious awareness of the person that they're dealing with, but a lot of their movements, their takedown ability and their scrambling, their body lock controls, their head movement, footwork, etc. A lot of that can be very automated. And they're the kind of things where someone like Corey Sandhagen, if he sat in front of the TV enough and done the research, and he has enough space in the fight, he'll find those things that Merab does as a pattern that he's not thinking about. Another good one is Frankie Edgar against Jose Aldo. Like Frankie had a habit of crossing his front feet, and Aldo used to take that front leg away from him when he was crossed. And that's just the boxing footwork that's a bad habit in MMA. But that's a good example of something that became automated in Frankie Edgar's game that was then food for Jose Aldo. So that's the thing. Long story short, does Corey Sandhagen have enough time to find the food in Merab's game to feed on him?
Yeah, it's so true because Rab's game, he likes to build momentum, move forward, and do all this stuff that maybe isn't. He might, like you said, he's open for people to land and react. And even what we saw last from Corey, just weaponizing that transition with Figgy and submitting him, like he is so dangerous. And if you're not covering, crossing your T's and dotting your I's, I'm just curious to see like, could he make Merab pay? Or is he just a superhuman dude that no one can get on top of? Is there anybody in the division outside of Corey that you think can give Merab a good run for his money? Like, I know Umar is on his way back and he's got to fight against Batista, but like maybe a rematch with Umar could be his toughest fight. I don't even know.
Yeah, I mean, Umar's a good shout because he's so well rounded, and the last fight was such a learning experience for him. It's the same for all the Magomedovs and everybody that comes out of that camp. Gadzhi Rabadanov and Moblid Habalayev, they've got so much expectation. And I was talking to Sean O'Connell on the broadcast about this the other day in France. What's weird about the Nurmagomedov camp is that sometimes we talk about them as a whole, like this is the team score,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's like they do it on wrestling meets as well. We've been watching a bunch of wrestling meets on YouTube during this training camp, and there's you'll see, oh, this coach's record is 287 matches, and it's got like a breakdown of wins and losses as the whole team, not like individual people. And because they have so few losses, people have started to like group the team together, which must put a lot of pressure on those young fighters. Usman coming into this weekend's fight against Paul, 19-0. Umar's in the same situation now. Obviously, some of that pressure's off his shoulders, but still, um, they're tremendous fighters, and I think once they've got that a little bit of relief from that pressure, like Umar, I think he's going to fly after this. After that last learning experience. So we'll have to see. I'd have to look at the division to give you a better answer, but certainly Umar's a good shout.
Yeah, there's some killers in there, like your Pyorians and stuff looking for the rematch, but there's a couple of interesting fights. Hey, just quickly, a absolute train crash. Khalil Yuri. What I love about it is Yuri, when you look at his style and what he does, he is not the type of fighter that should be having should be a former champion and should be still as dangerous as in the division as he is now. Somehow he's just able to take all these wild techniques and make them work for himself. And Khalil, a lot more structured, right? A lot more technical, but just goes to war with people and was able to put on a really impressive performance against Alex Pereira. What do you make of these two trains just crashing into each other like this? Because both guys are not backing up. I'm sure Khalil is planning to create a space there for Yuri to come in and to counter him and to try and put him out in devastating fashion at the start. But the thing with Yuri is only a few people can really do that to him. That's the thing that makes him dangerous. He's actually a lot harder to put away than what people realize.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously with Yuri's game, there are big gaps, big holes in his game, that you can expose if you can calculate them at the right time. And, unlike Merab, we were just talking about there being rhythms in his game that you can maybe pick up on. Yuri's very difficult to read because he doesn't necessarily open up too much either. He does a lot of unusual stuff and a lot of feints before he goes. And sometimes I don't even think he knows what he's going to do. The benefit with Khalil's style is that he's very good at just walking people down and having a very shelled up strong defense. And to be honest, I think he probably needs 5 or 6 low kicks before Yuri's movement's decimated. And I think with his defense, with his pressure, I think he's going to be able to get to Yuri's legs. I think he's going to be able to slow him down. And then I think Yuri's stuck up against the fence, trying to battle a tie clinch that he's not going to win. I think it's an interesting fight. I mean, Yuri's a problem to track down, especially in the bigger cage. You got to remember it's pay-per-view, so there's going to be more space in there for Yuri to work. But at the same time, take his legs out. That oblique kick or even just a solid calf kick is going to be a game changer in this fight, and that's where the tight guard that Khalil's got comes into play. It's going to be a fascinating one for as long as it lasts, but I think it's going to be quite a violent finish.
Yeah, what a fight, man. I was saying that they should have put that fight on UFC Perth this past weekend.
Yeah.
And put the Reyes Ulberg fight on this week's card, and that because there were like some ticket sale problems, they had to slash the tickets down to about $49 American because it was right after our Super Bowl here in anyway. But that would have made more sense, and I think for Ulberg, it's better to win on the same card as the title anyway. But anyway, just quickly before we wrap on that card, a big night for yourself. Veronica is back. I saw she was telling off some people about being a little bit messy in the gym over there.
Yeah. We've been drifting between Extreme Couture and the PI. Just a shout out to Extreme Couture and Eric Nixick and the team. They've been awesome to us. The PI's, it's a chaotic place. There are a few fighters in there still training, but there's lots of other people in there as well, influencers and this and that, and it does get a bit messy in there. I do feel for the cleaning team because they have their work cut out for them. They do a tremendous job, and some of the people that come in, and it's not the fighters, it's some of the other people that come in can be quite disrespectful of the space. I think she just had enough of it. So he needs to be careful.
Good on her. I say, Speed, pick up your fucking cards, brother. What the fuck are you doing, mate?
She'd back kick him through the fence. He'd never feel anything like it before. I know he's been hit by a few people and choked out a couple of times, but he had never felt a back kick like he'd feel from Veronica.
Well, I want to see him go back in there and pay get the receipt for that bullshit, man. I say, Speed, get in there and get back kicked. And I want to see that happen after Veronica wins this fight, because she's obviously on the card against Brogan Walker. Obviously, last fight didn't go the way that you guys might have planned, man. But obviously, this is a big fight, and this is going to be an exciting one to kick the night off with. What can we expect from Brogan? And has the camp been with you and Veronica for this one?
It's been awesome. It's been really good. We actually booked the trip out to Vegas just to kind of, check out Extreme Couture and see who was around before the fight was offered.
No way. Cool.
And it just kind of worked out perfectly. Like the trip was booked. So obviously, I had PFL events over here. So we were going to come out and check the place out and make some connections and some plans, and it just worked out perfectly. The last fight was a weird one. Obviously, we've been living with it for a few months and kind of picking it apart. And she's just a different fighter at this point. She just got in her own way last time, and we've been talking about it a lot. It was a big opportunity and a big event, much like this one is, of course. UFC 320, but holding on to that feeling for a few months after the last fight, it can be very, very motivating. I've been there myself. It can be very frustrating coming off a loss and having to kind of sit with it for a while, especially when it was, just because you kind of left it on the table, you didn't go and take it, which was certainly the feeling that we had coming out of MSG on the night. But I expect, I mean, do I really want to tell you? I don't think I need to tell you. I'm expecting a fun performance this time around. She's looking incredible. She's moving very well. She's cracking like she's never cracked before. Honestly, hands and feet, everything's working well. She's, her wrestling's really strong. She's been working a lot with Kenny Johnson, like proper, like hardcore 5 hours a day, couple of days a week when he's been coming out from California, like mini seminars. Veronica and Piero Rodriguez have been working together really well. She'll be in the corner, and it's just been, honestly, this camp has just clicked together perfectly. We've got Ryan Diaz in town as well, who's been helping us out. Veronica worked with him in Vancouver. He's just a great coach, great source of energy. So honestly, this camp couldn't have been better. And now it's just about water loading. The water loading started now. There's a half a gallon over there on the table next to her. And we've got a He-Man puzzle in front of us. This is what I'm doing today. That's my He-Man puzzle for the day.
Oh, perfect.
Right? Cool, right? I also try and need to get some sleep at some point. But yeah, we're good. We're good. Vegas is lovely. We've really enjoyed our time here, and UFC 320 is going to be a fun time. And we're looking forward for you to see the work that she's put in and get the win that she deserves.
Dude, I love that. I can't wait to see her in there. And by the way, she's obviously, I keep thinking she's pretty new to the organization, but she's almost a veteran now, man. She's been fighting in the UFC from like 2016 or something. And it's insane because when you start fighting in the UFC at such a young age, it's kind of hard to find your rhythm because you don't get a chance to do that on the amateur scene. And I feel like that's what she's done recently with the last, the 3-fight win streak, is just find that rhythm and that confidence and the ability to build on that. So I'm excited for you guys to do that at the event. Just quickly before I wrap up, I got to talk about the big PFL event. I do. It's happening here on Thursday in Australia, and that's going to be on Friday in America. Usman Hughes 2. It's the biggest I mean, this is the biggest rematch, I think, in PFL history, right? This is the fight that everybody's been waiting for. You're not going to be there on the ground, man, but you must be pretty excited about this one. What can we expect from this rematch?
Man, I think it's going to be absolute dynamite, really. I mean, because of the last one, Usman's going to be frustrated. He's going to be motivated. He's going to hate the fact that it wasn't clean enough for him to not have to give Paul a rematch. I also think, I look back to Usman's situation, and if I remember correctly, his camp was divided because Umar and Islam were fighting. So I think Habib was away, and I think honestly, he looked at Paul like he was going to blast through him. And when he arrived in fight week and Paul was so confident, like he was against AJ McKee, I think it kind of rattled Usman a little bit. And he was like, hang on a minute, this guy's going to push me. And that's exactly the fight that you got. There were so many moments in there where even if Paul didn't win, like a scorecard victory, there was like a moral victory in the rounds that really got the crowd on his side. Now, I've watched that fight back probably 100 times the last couple of weeks. I've done a breakdown of it, which will be up now as we're having this conversation. It's so fascinating how it kind of goes back and forth. But to be able to be a judge and to sit there cage side and clearly judge it without, being influenced by the crowd that is a tremendous task, because there was so much emotion and energy in that room shifting back and forth based on what was going on in the cage. We had 2 groin shots in the first round. Then there was another 2 groin shots later in the fight that Paul received both of them, a point deduction from that, a clash of heads where Paul was bleeding, but I actually think Usman was more hurt by the clash of heads, and then surprises in the fight where, people weren't expecting Paul to be able to defend the takedowns the way that he was. I mean, his takedown offense was outstanding. I think he defended 5 of 9 attempts. And his conditioning was incredible, as you would imagine. But Usman did start to slow down, and there were moments where he looked like, oh my goodness, this guy would not go away. And I think those little moral victories, they scored so highly on the crowd in the arena that it made for a very dramatic event. And I think that's what we're going to get again. I just think we get a different version of both fighters. I think Usman's going to come out like he's got an endless gas tank. I would imagine that Khabib is absolutely putting through the ringer for this one. And I would imagine that Paul, looking back on that last fight, feeling that he was so close in every one of those rounds to winning, I would imagine that he's leveled up again as well. So I'll be watching. I'll be very, very excited. Jimmy Smith's jumping into the booth with Sean O'Connell, and they're going to do a fantastic job. So I'll be looking forward to listening to that as well. And the whole card's stacked. There's great fights all the way down there. But obviously the main event is taking a lot of the shine, a lot of the attention.
Yeah, man. And Corey Anderson on the card, heaps of big fights. I love that though, man, because we speak sometimes over the phone, and it's just like you get to experience it as a fan. You don't have to commentate on it. And I'm happy for you to be able to experience such a big fight without actually having, because what people don't realize is when you're working those fights, you don't really enjoy them because you're working those fights and you have to do a certain thing and be very, make sure you don't sort of side with either guy, and it's almost like you don't watch the fights whenever you work the fights. So you get to actually watch them and enjoy it. And what a better fight to do it. That's this Thursday here in Australia, Friday in the States. PFL absolutely killing it. You're killing it as well, man. Best of luck, UFC 320 with Veronica. Can't wait to see what happens. And a phenomenal t-shirt as always. You always deliver with the t-shirts. There he is, Dan Hardy.